Another day, another story. Jesus wasn't the only one believed to have risen from the dead. Stories of resurrection appear in ancient cultures around the world. Welcome to Tabo Eminent Channel. According to the New Testament, Jesus Christ was cruelly martyred by the Romans around 33 AD, but after 3 days in the tomb, it says, Jesus miraculously rose again, appeared to his disciples and ascended to heaven. Jesus' resurrection and triumph over death is what Christians celebrate every Easter. But Christianity isn't the only ancient faith to worship a deity who dies and then rises again, as the Scottish anthropologist James Fraser explained in The Golden Bough, his landmark 1922 study of world religion and mythology. The world's mythologies and religions are rich with ancient resurrection stories that symbolize themes of death, rebirth, and the cyclical nature of life. In Egyptian mythology, Osiris is resurrected by his wife Isis after being murdered by his brother. Dionysus in Greek mythology is torn apart and reborn, representing the cycle of life and death. Attis in Phrygian mythology is resurrected by the goddess Cybele after a tragic death. Inanna/Ishtar of Sumerian/Babylonian myths descends to the underworld and is revived, symbolizing seasonal changes. Christianity centers around the resurrection of Jesus Christ, a pivotal event for believers. Lazarus, as depicted in the Bible, is raised from the dead by Jesus. While Buddhism lacks explicit resurrection stories, the concept of rebirth and the compassionate actions of Bodhisattvas embody spiritual renewal. These narratives convey profound cultural and religious insights into the mysteries of existence and the enduring human fascination with life after death. Ancient cultures across the globe have woven captivating resurrection stories into their mythologies and religions. In Egypt, Osiris rises from death through the magical efforts of his wife Isis. Greek mythology features Dionysus, torn apart and reborn, embodying the cyclical nature of life. Attis in Phrygian myths experiences resurrection by the goddess Cybele, symbolizing the renewal observed in the natural world. Inanna/Ishtar's descent and revival in Sumerian/Babylonian tales reflect seasonal changes. Christianity's core narrative involves the resurrection of Jesus Christ, a cornerstone of Christian faith. The Bible also tells of Lazarus being brought back to life by Jesus. While Buddhism lacks resurrection tales, the concept of rebirth and the compassionate actions of Bodhisattvas convey spiritual renewal. These diverse stories provide profound insights into cultural beliefs surrounding death, rebirth, and the enduring human quest for understanding the mysteries of existence. In the ancient Near East, where the Bible was written, stories of divine death and resurrection were closely tied with the agricultural cycle, and Fraser believed that early Christians likely chose a spring date for Easter to coincide with existing pagan festivals for their resurrected gods. Taken all together, the coincidences of the Christian with the heathen festivals are too close and too numerous to be accidental, concluded Fraser. Here are 6 examples of resurrection stories from ancient cultures around the world, including India, China, Mesoamerica, and Norse mythology. Tammuz, the spring god of Mesopotamia. In ancient agrarian societies, the last days of winter marked the end of months of meager subsistence and the long-awaited bounty of the spring and summer. In ancient Mesopotamia, one of the first agrarian civilizations, the people turned to divine explanations for these annual cycles of feast and famine. Ishtar was the great mother goddess of Mesopotamia and the source of nature's fertility and abundance. Her lover was Tammuz, a handsome young god who died each winter and passed away to the shadowy underworld. For 6 months of the year, Ishtar traveled to the realm of the dead to rescue her lover. During that time, the world was robbed of all fertility, reproduction and growth. Every spring, the stern goddess of the underworld, Alatu, would allow the imprisoned couple to be sprinkled with the water of life and return to the world of the living, bringing life and green vegetation back to the earth. In the Babylonian calendar, the resurrection was celebrated during Duazu or month of Tammuz, which fell in late June and early July. All across the ancient Near East, later cultures put their own twist on the spring resurrection story. The Phrygians told the tale of Attis, who was brought back to life on the spring equinox by Cybele, the fertility goddess. The Greeks told the myth of Persephone, kidnapped by Hades, who was allowed to return every spring from the underworld, heralding the return of vegetation and grain production. Osiris, the Egyptian god of death of agriculture. In ancient Egyptian mythology, Osiris is a god associated with the afterlife. According to the myth, Osiris was murdered by his brother Set, but his wife Isis magically reassembled his body and resurrected him. Osiris then became the ruler of the underworld. Like Mesopotamia, ancient Egyptian civilization was dependent on the cycles of nature. They especially relied on the annual spring flooding of the Nile, which fueled the agricultural abundance of the Nile basin. The ancient Egyptians believed that the orderly cycles of nature were controlled by Osiris, the god of agriculture. According to Egyptian mythology, Osiris once ruled the earth alongside his queen Isis, the fertility goddess. But Osiris was tricked and murdered by his brother Set, who chopped up Osiris's body and scattered his remains across Egypt. Isis reassembled Osiris's body, anointed it with oil and performed the elaborate rites of embalming, which resurrected Osiris to eternal life as the god of the underworld. Ancient pharaohs also hoped to become immortal through the same embalming and mummification rituals that Isis used to resurrect Osiris. In time, even common Egyptians chose to be mummified in the hopes of conquering death just as Osiris had done. Royal mummies like Tutankhamun were found wearing funerary masks bearing the likeness of Osiris. Outwitting death in ancient India. Further east, in India, there exists at least one beloved story of death and resurrection. According to Hindu tradition, there was once a clever and beautiful princess named Savitri, who refused to marry any of the suitors clamoring for her hand. She departed her palace in search of her true love and found Satyavan, a handsome woodsman who was once a prince. Savitri and Satyavan fell in love and married, but a messenger from the gods delivered a terrible prophecy: Satyavan would die in exactly 1 year. And as promised, on the young couple's first anniversary, Satyavan collapsed and died. Yamraj, the god of death, came to claim Satyavan's soul. But clever Savitri had a plan. She doggedly followed Yamraj across the burning desert and to the entrance to the underworld, begging for the return of Satyavan. Yamraj agreed to grant Savitri one wish, but not for her husband's life. Instead, Savitri asked that she be granted the gift of many children. When Yamraj accepted, she asked him how she was supposed to bear children without a husband. And since she had vowed to only marry Sochuvin, Yamraj had to return Savitri's husband to keep his word. Sochuvin was brought back to life and the happy couple were reunited. Bodhidharma and his single shoe. According to Buddhist tradition, the figure known as Bodhidharma was a great Indian sage who may have been the first to bring Buddhism to China. In the Zen Buddhist tradition, Bodhidharma often plays the role of the wise and wily Zen master, challenging his students with cryptic riddles that, if deciphered, lead to the path of enlightenment. One day, a Chinese diplomat named Song Yun was crossing the Pamir Mountains between China and India when he passed the now elderly Bodhidharma walking in the opposite direction. Song Yun asked where the master was going, and Bodhidharma replied that he was finally going home to India. Then Song Yun noticed that Bodhidharma was only wearing one shoe, so he asked why. Bodhidharma suggested that Song Yun ask the monks when he arrived in Shaolin. The men parted ways, but when Song Yun asked about Bodhidharma's shoe in Shaolin, he was thrown in jail for lying. Song Yun could not have seen Bodhidharma, because the master had died several years earlier. To prove it, the monks opened up Bodhidharma's tomb, but all they found was a single shoe. Not even death could contain the wisdom of Bodhidharma, who is often depicted barefoot and carrying a single shoe on a stick. Odin's sacrifice to himself. In Norse mythology, Odin is chief among the gods of Valhalla, a creator god whose wisdom and wizardry were unmatched. But Odin had to pay a terrible price to achieve his powerful and esoteric knowledge. According to Norse legend, the greatest sources of wisdom in the ancient world were the runes, magic symbols that not even the gods could decipher. But Odin was willing to do whatever was necessary, even face death itself, to untangle the meaning of the runes and access their hidden power. According to the epic Viking poem Hofmor, Odin subjected himself to a violent form of self-sacrifice, myself to my own self given, Odin says. Odin hung himself from the great tree Yggdrasil, pierced his side with a spear and forbade any of the other gods from coming to his aid. For 9 days, Odin hung from the tree, staring down into the watery depths of the well of Urd until finally, on the 9th day, the forms of the runes were revealed to him. In the language and imagery of the Hofmor, part of Odin died in that 9-day ordeal and he was reborn or resurrected as a far more powerful being with newfound knowledge and abilities. Quetzalcoatl, resurrection in Mesoamerica. In ancient Mesoamerica, the greatest of all the gods was Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent worshipped across centuries of Mayan, Toltec, and Aztec civilizations. In some traditions, Quetzalcoatl was an Osiris-like figure, the god of agriculture and vegetation closely associated with the rain god Tlaloc. And like Osiris, Quetzalcoatl was deceived by his brother, tricked into drinking a powerful intoxicant and sleeping with a priestess. Overcome with guilt, Quetzalcoatl killed himself through self-immolation, but rose again to life. In Toltec mythology, Quetzalcoatl is linked with Venus, the brightest star in the ancient sky that appeared to rise from the sun, like Quetzalcoatl rising from his funeral pyre. In his personification of Venus, the morning and evening star, Quetzalcoatl became the god of death and rebirth. As creator god, Quetzalcoatl also descended to the underworld to collect the bones necessary to make the first human beings. Thanks for watching. request you to subscribe the channel.